Hi, I'm DeRay Jones, and I'm from the Dinger Network office in Fargo, North Dakota. I am so excited to introduce our next speaker, Nicole Phillips. I had the pleasure of hearing Nicole speak earlier this year. In February, she spoke at one of our network days up in Fargo, and I was able to get her two books, Kindness is Contagious and Kindness is Courageous. Shortly after, when COVID hit, I was quarantined at home with my three young children trying to work and homeschool. Luckily, I had those books to keep me sane and also give me ideas of fun things to do with the kids. We loaded the car up, went to town with our sidewalk chalk, and drove around decorating people's sidewalks, giving them messages and fun pictures. When Easter came around, I knew there were many people that want to cook themselves the full Easter meal. So my family and I made and packaged up about 10 different Easter meals and drove them around and delivered them. The kids had so much fun doing this, and I feel like they learned so much. Nicole has written another book, The Negativity Remedy. She's a regular guest on the Hallmark Home and Family Show. Nicole has her own podcast called the Podcast. She's married to Saul Phillips, who is the men's head basketball coach at Northern State University in Aberdeen, where they're raising their three children. If you're an HGTV junkie like me, you may have seen her earlier this year on House Hunters. I'm so excited to see Nicole again and hear what she has to say today. I'll turn it over to you, Nicole.
Thank you so much, DeRay. So one fun thing about DeRay, I got to meet her when I spoke to the office in Fargo, and it happens to be Derek Dinger's office. I don't know if any of you know Derek, but he's an amazing guy. During the presentation, something came up, and I was talking about mindset and perspective, and I think I might have been complaining that my husband never sends me flowers, but when we first got together, we've been married 20 years now. And when we first got together, my husband sent me stargazers because I used to work on TV. And he said, every time I gaze at you, I'm gazing at a star. That's stuff that doesn't happen after 20 years of marriage, right? So I spoke at their office, and later that day, I got this huge bouquet of flowers, and they were stargazers. And on it was this note that said, always, comma, Saul, which is my husband's name. Isn't that so sweet? But because we've been married for 20 years, I knew there was no way my husband sent me flowers for no reason the day that I happened to mention that he never sends me flowers anymore. So I did a little investigating, and I found out that Derek was actually the one who anonymously sent me the stargazers. Isn't that sweet? Oh, that's a good office right there. Well, hello, and DeRay forgot to mention that I actually won a car on The Price is Right. That's like my biggest claim to fame, really. And so if this conference were happening in LA as we had intended it to, I would have taught you all the secret to winning a car on The Price is Right. But since we're here, instead, I guess I'll just talk about kindness. How about that? We'll talk about cars another time, and we'll meet in LA, and that will be great. But for today, you're going to get kindness. So I need to be clear about one thing before we begin. This is really important. I consider myself to be a kindness advocate, not a kindness expert. In my mind, an expert means you get it right every time. You have it together. You've cracked the code. And I'll tell you what, my friends, ask any member of my family, and they will tell you I have not cracked the code to kindness. A couple of years ago, we were living in Ohio, and my son was in charge of cleaning up the mudroom. So he was supposed to take all 478 shoes and line them up and put the backpacks away and do all of that before he had a play date. Well, I come home, I walk into the mudroom, and what do? I trip over shoes. And so immediately I yell, Charlie, blah, blah, blah. You were supposed to pick this up before you had your play date, and now I tripped over. I could have broken an ankle, just screaming. And Charlie's friend, who is standing there, his name is Brody, and he's a teenage boy. And he knows that I've been writing this Kindness is Contagious column for almost a decade. And he knows I actually wrote a book called Kindness is Contagious. And so Brody gets this little smirk on his face, and he turns to Charlie and he says, just under his normal tone of voice, well, I guess kindness isn't always contagious. Oh my goodness. How humbling is that? Yeah, I had no choice but to laugh in that moment because he was absolutely right. Here I go around and I talk about kindness and I teach about kindness and I'm really intentional about it. And then boom, in one moment, totally I blew it. Well, we solved that issue because we moved from Ohio to South Dakota the next year. So I never have to see that kid again. So he can't tattle on me. I get to tell when I want to tell, but he can't tell anybody what he's seen in my house. Yes, we are all a work in progress. Every one of us, me for sure. And I'd be willing to bet that you would agree that you are too. But I have found one similarity in people who are really living a joy filled life. And that one similarity is that they have the kindness perspective. Let me show you a picture. What do you see in this picture? Is it a circle, a black dot? Well, a professor showed this picture to his entire classroom of students. And he asked them to do a quick jot, write down what you see. And then he collected all of those papers and he started reading them one after another after another. And some of them would say, that's a black dot. Some said, that's a black circle. Some said, that is a hole into an alternate universe. Some of them said, I think it actually is navy. It's a navy dot. Some people said, that's a period. Well, the one thing that the professor noticed and noted is that every single student mentioned the black dot. Not one of them mentioned what else was on that page. So what else is on the page? White space. It's just like our lives. We have black dots and we have white space. So the black dots in your life, think about what those might be. Maybe you've had a divorce. Maybe you've had a health problem or a cancer diagnosis. Maybe you've had financial issues. Maybe that's your black dot. Maybe it's a fight with a child. Whatever it is, those black dots, when we look at them and when we fixate on them, when we give them our attention, they grow larger. And that becomes all we can see. But just because that's all we can see doesn't mean that's the only thing on the page. It's certainly not the only things in our life. All of us have white space in our lives. And so what's the white space? The white space is friendship. It's cooking a delicious meal. It's going for a bike ride. It's doing an act of kindness for someone just randomly because it seemed like a fun idea. It's holding hands with a spouse or a child. It's snuggling up on the couch with your dog. Your white space is where kindness and creativity and love and helping and encouragement live. And they do live in your everyday, right alongside those black dots. But how do we get to the point where we can really see that white space, where you can really develop that kindness perspective? We think about what we're thinking about. So how do we get to the place where we can really develop that kindness perspective? By thinking about what we're thinking about. That's right. Think about what you're thinking about. That's the first step. What does that mean? Well, let's try it. What do you find yourself thinking about most of the time? Have you come up with a few things? Do you feel like it's a to-do list, like where you have to be next or who you have to email next or where your next Zoom call is coming from and what you need to do to prep for that? Or is it fears about whether or not your kids will end up bringing COVID home from school? Is it, worrying that they're going to be bullied? Or is it, thinking about why does that person, have so many bad foods in their grocery cart at the grocery store? Or why are they such crabby parents? Or maybe you look at yourself and you think, why can't you create a meal that everyone will eat? I know I made lasagna 3 times and have forgotten to put the lasagna noodles in twice. The third time my husband ate it and he threw up. So, I'm just saying, I totally get it, but I can be hard on myself for not being able to actually make a meal that people enjoy eating. So here's the thing about those thoughts. They generally fall into one of three categories: hurry, worry, and jury. The hurry is that to-do list. It is the, this has to get done, then this has to get done, and will I have time for that? And I gotta hurry here, and I barely have time to go to the bathroom. The hurry. Or the worry. The worry is the, will my kids bring COVID home from school? What's gonna happen if we have to quarantine for 2 weeks? Will there be a school shooting? Or, what if I don't get that promotion and I can't pay the credit card bills? And that's our worry. And our jury means that we basically designate ourselves as judge and jury of everybody else. So we're either making fun of ourselves or coming down on ourselves, like I have done before with cooking, or we're doing it about other people. You should be a better parent than that. You should provide better for your family for that. We're talking about things that really are none of our business, and yet we project a judgment on that. Has anyone ever been there in the hurry, the worry, or the jury? Anyone? Is it resonating? Yeah. And sometimes we find ourselves having hypothetical conversations, perhaps in the shower with people who don't exist. And we think to ourselves, if that person calls me and they say this, I am so telling them this. And we figure out exactly how we're going to react to someone before it even happens. Hurry, worry, jury, and hypothetical situations. Our thoughts, when they are untethered, when they are unaccompanied, can really be devastating. They can change the way we look at our day. They can change our emotional output for the day. I used to stand in front of the mirror, and I would get out of the shower. I would look in the mirror and I would wonder why are there wrinkles there that never were there before? We can sure be hard on ourselves. But guess what? You don't have to think every thought that comes into your brain. Isn't that great news? We do not have to entertain every thought that pops in there. And the second piece of great news is that you can't think two thoughts at once. So I want to take you on a little vacation. Are you ready? Take a look at this. Oh, this looks like a place I need to be right now. Can you imagine yourself there? Just take a moment to exhale. Imagine yourself out on that pier. Perhaps there's a little wind blowing. You can feel the sunshine on your skin. You can hear the waves lapping up against the shore. Maybe there's a seagull. Can you smell? Can you smell the water and the freshness of the air? Just take a moment. You deserve this moment. Just take a moment and be there in the middle of that. And as you're standing on that pier, just enjoying the view, think about the top 5 things you buy every time you go to the grocery store. Whoa, you're not standing on the pier anymore, are you? No, you're in the dairy aisle of the Pick and Save. For me, it's milk, butter, bread, eggs, and Fruit Loops, right? I don't know what it is for you, but if you're thinking about your groceries, you are no longer on that vacation, right? Yes, you cannot think 2 thoughts at one time. And that, my friends, is great news, because we can choose to cast out the thoughts that aren't serving us. When we get into that hurry, worry, and jury, we can cast out, we can say, nope, you don't belong here. I'm not going to entertain you because you are not serving me well. And how do we do that? Reject and replace. So rejecting and replacing began for me almost 10 years ago. 9 years ago, I was at the edge of what anyone would call an alcoholic. I was a drinker and a smoker and an overeater. I was angry at my husband all the time over things like him leaving his socks in the middle of the living room floor, or filling up the ice cube tray wrong, as if there's a right way to do it. Apparently, I thought there was. Oh, when I started investigating my thoughts, I realized that my thoughts were playing a huge role into how I was feeling about myself and everyone else and my day in general. And so I began rejecting. And basically what that means is when I had a thought pop into my brain, I would think about what I was thinking about. And then I would say, I reject that thought. Because you know immediately whether a thought you're thinking is serving you well, right? I reject that thought. And friends, when I started this, I had to say to myself, I reject that thought about 100 times a day. And so I say, I reject that thought. But that's not enough to move our brains to a place of positivity. So I would say, I reject that thought. And then I would replace that thought with a predetermined idea. And so for me, I had a piece of paper and I wrote down 9 words on that piece of paper. They were 9 qualities that I wanted to build more of in my life: love, joy, peace, patience, kindness, goodness, faithfulness, gentleness, and self-control. Now, if you're taking notes on this, that's okay. I'll say them again for you. As I tell this story, you're going to get them a few more times because I had to say them to myself over and over and over again. Love, joy, peace, patience. So there I would find myself in the middle of a thought. Maybe I was standing at the gym and I was looking at myself and wondering why I had these rolls where, it was supposed to be smooth between my t-shirt and my shorts. And I would look at myself and I would think, why are you even working out? It's not going to matter anyway. And then I would catch myself and I would say, I reject that thought. And then I would think, love, joy, peace, patience. I'm not very good at memorizing. So I'd have to pull that piece of paper out of my pocket and I'd look at it. Love, joy, peace, patience, kindness, goodness, faithfulness, gentleness, self-control. 9 words. And so those particular words they're from the fruit of the Spirit, which happens to be in the Bible because, I have a faith element that is important to me, but you find whatever words matter to you. Find qualities you want to build more of in your life. Find a mantra, find a scripture, find a quote, go online and find something, write it down on a piece of paper and put it in your pocket. And then when you go back and you are rejecting, you know already what you're going to replace that thought with. And that's important. Love, joy, peace, patience, kindness, goodness, faithfulness, gentleness, self-control. You got it. And when you've memorized that, if you still need a little help in retraining your brain, then find another verse or quote that matters to you and put that in your pocket and start again. Okay, I want to show you something. This is the mudroom of my house. Okay, kidding. It's not the mudroom of my house, but when I look at my mudroom, it feels like this. It feels like 478 pairs of shoes. Oh, so I used to walk into that mudroom, trip over the shoes, and immediately bark out orders or complaints about the fact that someone hadn't done what I had asked them to do. And as little as 2 years ago, every once in a while, it still slips out. That's why I'm not an expert. I'm an advocate. But now I walk into the mudroom after learning to reject and replace thoughts. I walk into that mudroom. I trip over the same shoes. And instead of yelling, I pause. And in that pause, I look down at the shoes and I think, the tennis shoes belong to my high school daughter who made the varsity cross country team as a freshman and was so delighted. She loves to run. So we have stinky, smelly running shoes in the middle of our mudroom. And then I look at the littlest shoes. They belong to my 10-year-old. And those little shoes to me represent a kid who's healthy. When he was born, he had a heart defect, and we didn't know if he would be able to run and jump and play and do all the things that kids his age can do. And yet he can. And then I look at those pink Crocs and I think about my teenage son, Charlie. He's 14. Yep. He's the one who was supposed to put the shoes away in the mudroom and didn't and got yelled at during his play date. Well, I look at those pink Crocs and I think about how pink became his favorite color 5 years ago when I was diagnosed with breast cancer. And how he loves pink because for him, it's a way to support his mama. Isn't that sweet? Doesn't that change what those shoes look like in the mudroom? Absolutely. I still call out to my kids and say, hey, you want to come and take care of this now? But it's not me walking in and just exploding. And here's why that pause is so important, because every day we teach our brain how to react to future situations based on how we react to the current situation. So you're teaching your brain how to react to something tomorrow based on how you react to it today. That's why it's so essential to reject and replace and get that pause in there so that you know, this is how I want to teach myself to react in the future. And so you create those new pathways in the brain, and very quickly, quicker than you'll imagine, you'll find that your brain has indeed started veering naturally toward the positive. Isn't that fun? So I want to help you bridge that gap between living life and loving life. I want to help you change your mind, or maybe just tweak your perspective if you already feel like you have that kindness perspective. That's awesome. Maybe you just need a little tweak. So because I love you so much and I love this message so much, I am going to give you, are you ready for it? Da-da-da, homework. Yes, you may let out a groan. All right, here's your homework. The first thing we're going to do is set an alarm to think about what you're thinking about. Go to your phone. Yes, mine's dirty. And go into your calendar. And then you're going to find this little dot up there, the little plus sign, if you have an iPhone, but I'm sure it's on the Android as well. You're going to type in here, think about what I'm thinking about. And then we're going to go in here, and let's say we put that for Wednesday at 1 p.m. Now, here's the important part. You're going to go to the repeat, and you're going to hit every week. Unless you're an overachiever, then you can hit every day. And so what's going to happen with that is that every Wednesday, you're going to get an alert, a reminder to think about what you're thinking about. And in that moment, think to yourself, is this where I want to park my brain? Is this thought serving me? Or do I need to get on top of those thoughts and continue to reject and replace the ones that don't serve me well? So that's their first piece of homework. The second is to read The Negativity Remedy. I wrote a new book. It's called The Negativity Remedy. It came out on September 1st, brand new. And I have this reject and replace tool in that book, along with a whole bunch of other ideas to gain a kindness perspective and to deal with difficult people and to deal with difficult situations and to retrain your brain. And so I really, really would love it if you would read that book, because I know that there is work to be done in our minds, at least in my mind, and I'm guessing maybe in your mind too. So buy it, borrow it from a friend, get it at the library. It's called The Negativity Remedy. And then your third piece of homework. This one's fun. Let's connect. I would love to hear from you after you read the book, or even after watching this presentation. I would love for you to connect with me and say, hey, Nicole, this thought really resonated with me. This tool really resonated with me, so that I can know that and I can use it in the future to help other people really work on their perspective. And the other thing that I would love from you are your kindness stories. So let's connect. Share your kindness story with me. I still write this newspaper column that runs in newspapers in North Dakota and Minnesota. It's called Kindness is Contagious, and people share their stories with me. You can share an idea of something you've done and how it made you feel, so that people know you don't have to be a superhero in order to be kind. Or you can perhaps tell me about a time when kindness showed up at just the right moment for you. Now, one final story. There was a man, this one came out of Fargo, North Dakota, and he was driving in a strip mall, and he was going one direction. And he noticed a woman in a car, and she was driving toward him, because in the middle of that strip mall was the drive-through to the coffee shop. So he's coming from one direction, she's coming from the other direction, and he tells me they made eye contact through the window. Now, this was not like, ooh la la, eye contact. This was like her saying to him, don't you dare get your coffee in front of me at this drive-through. And so just as he's trying to figure out what to do and processing this look, she floors it, and she goes into the drive-through of the coffee shop. The man wasn't actually going to the coffee shop. He was just driving through the strip mall to get out of there and head on to work. But instead of going to work, he stopped And he got out of the car and he went into the coffee shop and he said to the barista, I want to buy whatever the woman in the drive-through is ordering right now. And as he's telling me this story, I thought, wow, like I asked him, how do you get to that level of a kindness plane where it's just totally altruistic and you just naturally think of others first? That's amazing. And he kind of giggled and he said, well, I'll tell you what, I knew I had a choice. I could have gone on to work and complained to my coworkers about this woman who cut me off and glared at me and just was rude. And he said, and I know that my coworkers would have shared their own stories and we could have all commiserated about how terrible people are. He said, or I knew that I could spend 5 minutes and $5 and I could go into that coffee shop and buy her coffee. He said, and then I knew for the rest of the day, I could think about how clever I am. Kindness is so powerful. And I would love for you to be able to harness that power in your own life. By the way, remember how I told you 9 years ago I was on the edge of being an alcoholic? 1 year after being intentional and systematic about kindness, I quit drinking, I quit smoking, I lost 30 pounds, and I fell in love with my husband, who it turns out is a really great guy. Thank you so much for your time and your dedication to kindness. You are the negativity remedy. Thank you for having me today. Have a great day.